Snow whispered across the rifle's barrel as Sergeant Kane lay prone on the ridge, his breath frosting in the sub-zero air. The mountains stretched in both directions, jagged and endless, its silence broken only by the low groan of the wind. His gloved finger rested against the trigger guard, steady and patient as he studied the ridge across the valley. Through the scope, faint heat signatures shimmered, alien movement, confident and exposed against the white expanse. They weren't even hiding anymore. They didn't think they had to. Kane shifted slightly, careful not to disturb the snow crust beneath him. The temperature had dropped another few degrees since dawn, but that was good. The colder it got, the more predictable things became. His breath came out in slow, visible plumes, freezing in his beard. He blinked to clear the sting of frost from his lashes and glanced at the faint silhouette of Corporal Imani crouched a few meters to his left, her own rifle angled toward the same ridge. She caught his eye for a moment and nodded, an unspoken message. They were ready, but not yet. Above them, the aliens loomed on the opposing slope, sleek armor, dark as oil, crowned with crystalline helmets that caught the sun like glass prisms. They were tall, elegant, almost artful in their posture. Kane could hear their laughter crackling through the comms, distorted by static but unmistakably derisive. Human soldiers, one voice sneered in broken English. Your thermal shells are toys. Your blood freezes before you fight. The laughter that followed was sharp and cold. Kane muted the feed. He didn't need the distraction. Imani exhaled sharply. They always talk so much, she whispered. You'd think they'd get bored. Kane smirked under his balaclava. Arrogance keeps them warm. The radio crackled once. Command's voice, quiet and clipped. Maintain overwatch. Do not engage. Copy, Kane replied, though his trigger finger twitched. Every instinct in him screamed for action. The aliens' patrols had harassed their supply lines for days, ambushing convoys and taunting the survivors. Now they stood in plain sight, daring the humans to react. It was theater for them, a reminder of who supposedly ruled this frozen planet. But the humans weren't finished. Not yet. Kane checked his rifle again, bolt secure, chamber clean, optics stable despite the cold. He adjusted the windage, calculating cross drift at this temperature. The math was second nature now. Every gust, every shimmer of snow mattered. Imani shifted again, repositioning slightly downhill to widen their field of fire. She didn't need orders. That was why Kane trusted her. Across the valley, one alien raised an arm, gesturing mockingly in their direction. Through the scope, Kane could see the crystalline surface of its helmet catch the sunlight. A perfect target. He inhaled, then exhaled a long, measured breath that formed a small cloud before his face. Not yet. Timing was everything. The aliens had made the same mistake every superior enemy made. They underestimated silence. They mistook patience for fear. Kane had seen it before, on ruined city streets, in jungle ambushes, in deserts that baked flesh to bone. Humans endured. That was their oldest trick. Looks like they're settling in, Imani murmured. Let them get comfortable, Kane said. The wind shifted again, brushing against his cheek. It carried a faint metallic scent, burned ozone from the aliens' equipment. The smell of arrogance, he thought. Above the enemy ridge, the sky burned blue and sharp, a color so vivid it almost hurt to look at. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then an alien drone rose from their ranks, scanning the snowfield, humming like an angry hornet. Kane stayed perfectly still, heartbeat slowed, every muscle frozen with purpose. The drone passed overhead, blind to the heat signatures buried deep beneath layers of insulated fabric and snow. When it was gone, Imani's voice returned, quieter than before. They think we're gone. Good, Kane said, lowering his eye from a scope. Let them. He looked back toward the alien ridge, where laughter still echoed faintly across the frozen air. They don't understand what cold does to brittle things. He smiled, thin and fierce, as the mountains swallowed the sound. Kane's fingers ached from the cold, but he welcomed the pain. It kept him alert, reminded him he was still alive. The wind had sharpened since dawn, slicing through the valley with a sound like tearing cloth. Imani crouched beside him, checking her rifle's bolt with careful precision. Every motion was slow, deliberate. In the thin air, waste nothing, not movement, not breath. The alien ridge remained quiet now, their figures faint silhouettes against the pale morning light. Silence had replaced laughter, but it wasn't victory yet. It was tension stretched thin as wire. Kane shifted his gaze to the distant peaks, their jagged forms cutting the horizon. Somewhere up there, the aliens' forward command watched through their crystalline optics, convinced their dominance was inevitable. He almost admired them for it. Almost. But admiration had no place here. Only patience and understanding. And humans had both. "Remind me," Imani said quietly, "why are we freezing ourselves out here instead of hitting them back?" "Because we're not ready to hit them yet," Kane replied, not looking away from his scope. "You only get one chance to teach someone they're wrong." She gave a soft huff of amusement. "And we're the teachers now." Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No, with a lesson." He remembered the briefing 2 weeks earlier, back when they discovered what the scientists at Outpost Thule had been whispering about. The aliens' crystalline helmets, prized for their clarity and resilience under heat, were designed to refract energy blasts, scatter plasma, and absorb shock. Perfect in theory. But Thule's engineers had noticed something in the lab tests. When temperatures dropped far below freezing, those same crystalline matrices became fragile, resonating under specific frequencies until they fractured. It wasn't a weakness the aliens could have imagined. Their worlds were warm, their wars fought under suns, not ice. Kane had been one of the first to volunteer for the field test. Not out of pride, he didn't care about proving superiority. He cared about showing them that underestimating humans had consequences. The modified rounds now chambered in his rifle weren't meant to punch through armor. They were tuned precisely to the resonant frequency of that crystal compound. A single hit would make the entire helmet shatter from within, like striking glass with sound. Elegant, silent, efficient. He checked his scope again, fine-tuning the rangefinder. Across the valley, an alien figure raised a device, scanning the ridgeline, searching for movement. The irony wasn't lost on him. They had every advantage, yet they were blind in the ways that mattered. Imani was watching too, her gloved hands steady as stone. "They look bored," she said. "They will be," Kane murmured, for about 3 more minutes. The radio clicked softly in his ear. A voice came through, low and deliberate. "Sierra team, confirm target lock." Kane's pulse slowed. The words were simple, but the meaning was heavy. It was time. "Confirmed," he answered. Imani's voice followed, calm but sharp. "Confirmed. Hold until synchronized signal," command said. "On my mark." Kane adjusted his rifle one last time. The world seemed to narrow to the space between his heartbeat and the ridge. The wind quieted, or perhaps he simply stopped hearing it. Through the scope, he could see the faint shimmer of sunlight glancing off an alien's helmet. Perfect angle, perfect distance. He felt the hum of the rifle beneath his palm, the quiet power waiting to be unleashed. Imani broke the silence with a whisper. "They don't even know we're here." "That's the point," Kane said. His voice was steady, but something fierce burned underneath. The radio crackled again, 3 words cold and absolute. "Targets confirmed. Execute." Kane drew a slow breath, centering the crosshairs on the first alien. For a heartbeat, he felt the universe pause with him. Mountains, snow, sky, all holding their breath. Then he exhaled, a whisper of frost leaving his lips. The trigger moved under his finger, and the rifle answered with a muted thud that vanished into the endless white. He didn't need to see the result yet. He already knew what would happen next. The rifle's muted report vanished into the cold, swallowed by distance and snow. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. The alien Kane had targeted remained upright, unmoving, as if the shot had missed entirely. Kane held his breath, eyes locked through the scope, waiting for the physics he trusted more than hope. Then the helmet bloomed outward in a sudden, violent shimmer, fracturing into countless crystalline shards that flashed once in the sun before scattering into the snow. The alien's body folded backward, lifeless before it hit the ground. Imani inhaled sharply. Direct effect, she murmured, already shifting her aim. The ridge erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted in their own sharp, clicking language, voices overlapping in confusion and disbelief. One pointed toward the fallen body, another toward the human ridgeline, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Kane didn't give them time to adapt. He adjusted his aim by instinct and fired again. Another helmet shattered, then another, each detonation clean and contained, the soundless violence more terrifying than any explosion. Imani fired in perfect rhythm with him. Their shots were spaced, deliberate, each one chosen, each one final. Helmets cracked and burst like frozen glass struck by an invisible hammer. Some aliens staggered, clutching at their heads as fractures raced across their visors before giving way entirely. Others dropped where they stood, never understanding what had killed them. The taunting broadcast dissolved into panicked noise. Retreat, one voice screamed, the word mangled by fear. Drones lifted from a ridge in a frantic scramble, their sensors sweeping wildly, but their operators were dying faster than commands could be given. One drone veered erratically, then plunged into the snow as its controller collapsed. Kane felt no rush of triumph, only focus. This was the work. This was what he had trained for. He tracked a fleeing figure, compensating for its uneven movement, and squeezed the trigger. The helmet shattered mid-stride, and the body tumbled down the slope, scattering crimson across the white. Kane shifted again, scanning for targets, for threats, for anything that might still matter. Multiple hostiles down, Imani said, her voice steady despite the carnage. They're breaking. Keep pressure, Kane replied. Don't let them regroup. The ridge that had once felt untouchable now looked fragile, its defenders exposed and scrambling. Aliens dove for cover behind rocks and equipment, abandoning their proud stance. One attempted to raise a weapon, but Kane fired first, and the crystalline visor split apart in a spiderweb of fractures before exploding outward. The alien dropped the weapon and fell silently. Within minutes, the laughter that had echoed across the valley was gone. The broadcast cut off abruptly, replaced by a dead, hollow silence. Smoke drifted from damaged equipment, rising in thin tendrils that vanished into the cold air. Snow continued to fall, indifferent, settling over shattered helmets and fallen bodies alike. Kane lowered his rifle slightly, scanning for movement. His breathing slowed as the adrenaline ebbed, replaced by a heavy, grounded calm. Imani rose just enough to get a better view, her posture alert but controlled. I don't see any standing, she said. Neither do I, Kane replied. He took one last look through the scope, confirming what his instincts already told him. The ridge was theirs now, won not by brute force, but by understanding. He exhaled, long and steady, watching his breath drift into the air. Somewhere far off, the mountains echoed faintly, as if remembering the sound of breaking crystal. Kane knew this moment would travel beyond this battlefield, carried in terrified reports and fractured signals. The aliens would tell others what had happened here, and when they did, the story would not be about a single shot or a single ridge. It would be about the day humans proved that patience could be deadlier than power. Silence reclaimed the valley, thick and heavy, broken only by the distant wind combing through snow and wreckage. Kane rose from his prone position, joints stiff, rifle still warm against his palms. He scanned the ridge methodically, confirming what the scope had already told him. No movement, no resistance, no lingering defiance. The aliens were gone, or dead, and the mountain felt suddenly larger without their voices staining it. Imani stood beside him now, eyes moving with the same disciplined caution. Hard to believe they were laughing 10 minutes ago, she said. They laughed because they thought survival was strength, Kane replied. They never learned the difference. Command's voice returned, quieter than before, edged with something like awe. Sierra team, confirm ridge secure. Confirmed, Kane said. Minimal expenditure. Maximum effect. There was a pause on the line, filled with distant murmurs. Understood. Hold position. Kane looked down the slope at the shattered remnants of alien armor half buried in snow. The crystalline helmets lay in fragments, their beauty gone, reduced to jagged debris. He felt no satisfaction in the sight, only certainty. Humanity hadn't won because it was cruel or clever. It had won because it paid attention. Imani knelt near one of the fallen helmets, careful not to touch it. They built everything to endure heat, she said softly. Never imagine cold as an enemy. Most don't, Kane answered. Cold doesn't roar. It waits. A new transmission cut through the channel. Alien in origin, panicked and unfiltered. Kane listened as fractured phrases repeated. Withdrawal, unknown weapon, unacceptable losses. The message ended abruptly, replaced by static. Whatever command structure the aliens had left on this world was retreating, carrying fear instead of certainty. Imani glanced at Kane. They'll come back eventually. Yes, he said, but they'll come back different. He keyed his transmitter, switching to an open frequency. His voice was calm, measured, stripped of triumph. This is Sergeant Kane of the Terran Expeditionary Forces. What happened here was not an ambush. It was an answer. You mistook patience for weakness. You mistook silence for surrender. He released the channel and let the words carry outward, toward orbit, toward stars that had never known humans except as targets. The message wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. Snow began to fall harder, softening the edges of the battlefield. Kane slung his rifle and took one last look at the ridge where the aliens had once stood tall and untouchable. The mountain remained, indifferent to victories and defeats, but something had changed upon it. Imani adjusted her pack and smiled faintly. Think they'll remember this place? Kane started down the slope, boots crunching through fresh snow. They will, he said, because we left them a lesson they can't shatter. Above them, the sky cleared, revealing a pale sun climbing higher, illuminating the frozen world in cold light. Kane breathed deeply, filling his lungs with air that burned and sustained him in equal measure. Humanity would be tested again. It always was. But as long as humans endured, adapted, and waited, there would always be another ridge where arrogance froze and broke. The lesson would travel with them, carried in memory, fear, and fractured reports, shaping how the next encounter began. Kane knew that survival was never about domination, only endurance, awareness, and the willingness to wait longer than anyone else. In that quiet, frozen valley, humanity had not announced itself with fire, but with restraint, and the universe would remember the difference. He walked on, already listening for the next silence that would demand patience, resolve, and a steady hand. Soon enough. Always.